Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Jared Brandon.
Me, Todd Novak, and our very special guest,
Tony Dudzik with Pickguardian Custom Pickguards.
Let's be honest, you're not with Pickguardian Pickguards, you are Pickguardians.
I am he.
He is them.
So we have a guy. He's local, and he's been doing a pretty specialized thing, making custom pickguards. Not just custom pickguards. You're a micro pickguard factory for the world.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. I do work for people all over the world. It's kind of interesting. It started off as kind of a experiment at the time of e-commerce, as it was called back then. So I put a website together, and I was kind of curious as to what kind of response I would get, and I was just kind of shocked.
Yeah,
almost immediately. And people were sending me money and pickguards and asking me to do the work. So
who knew?
I had no idea.
Wild. So you just actually did a fantastic pickguard for me, which I'm beyond excited about. I bought what year was it? It's a 2000 something or other reissue Gibson special double cutaway with mini trapezoid inlays in black. I've been searching for that guitar for a long time.
They're pretty cool.
And I found one, but in my search for that guitar, ever since I've imagined that in my head, it has always had a gold dust pickguard on it. That's the only way it could have been. So I contacted Tony and I said, this is what I want. He says, I can do that. And I got it back, and it was so much better than I expected. That sounds kind of weird saying that, because you're like, it's a pickguard, right? But the attention to detail that he put into it was, it isn't like just a pickguard you get from the store. Mm-hmm. Pretty special stuff. So we're going to get into his method, how he got into all this, and all of the very interesting things that he runs across. First, so hey, we got a call from Johnny Balmer of Alchemy Audio out in Chicago, and he gave me a holler and wanted me to see if he could drop in and share something with everybody out there. So Johnny, take it away.
Yes. Thanks, Todd. Hey, it's Johnny from Alchemy Audio in Chicago. And I believe on our podcast interview from a while back, mm-hmm. I had kind of teased that I was involved in this upcoming project, and it is now kind of come to fruition, so to speak. So what I did is I partnered with Kevin from Ion Electronics, and we're going to be producing a limited run of the Lab Series L5 preamp in a pedal. And some of you may be familiar with the Lab Series solid state amp from the 70s, designed by Moog, distributed by a parent company of Gibson. They kind of have a cult following as being one of the most quote unquote tube sounding of the solid state amps. And this will be the preamp section of it, 2-channel preamp in a pedal form. It's a pretty involved build. There's lots of knobs, lots of op amps, lots of stuff going on under the hood. And this works fantastic as a preamp connected to a power amp. If you're going to go that route, you could also go into like an effects return on your amp. And you can also go direct into like a live or studio console. And I've actually had a few people use the prototype for tracking things like bass guitar and acoustic guitar in a studio and just going direct into the board. It's got plenty of output on tap, so you can use it in a variety of different ways.
So would this be something like we kind of touched on this on a previous episode where we're starting to hear of more and more live situations where even guitar players are going straight into a board. Is this something that would facilitate that?
Absolutely. And I can see people using it in that context because it does have so much versatility within the pedal. So you've got 2 channels. The second channel has fully parametric EQ, compression if required on both channels that you can turn on and off. I've found it to be a pretty good platform for stacking with other dirt pedals. So in video demo, if you guys go to the website or to the listing that is on reverb.com, you can see a great reverb YouTube video that they did for me demonstrating it. And we kind of put it through all the paces. But we did a section where we stacked it with one of my modified Boss SD1s, which a lot of people probably have laying around. And it's amazing like how this thing sounds when stacked with other pedals. And then you can switch between like a cleaner tone and a dirtier tone.
So what would be an advantage? So is somebody out there is listening to this right now and they're saying, okay, well, I mean, my amp is okay. Is this something where someone might say, this could be a good alternative for buying an entire new rig, or what would be an optimum situation for somebody to use this?
There's even a Facebook group devoted to owners of the Lab Series amps. And for someone in that scenario where these things are heavy, and for anyone who's getting tired of carrying it around from gig to gig, but really wants that kind of signature sound of the amp, this is a great alternative. You throw this in a gig bag, and like I said, you can run it with a smaller power amp or just go direct into a board. So that would be one application. Okay. But otherwise, this thing could, in theory, replace an existing amp or even just enhance an amp that you already have.
Okay.
Just because of the different adjustability. It's got 12 different knobs on it altogether, and 2 channels. So there's a lot of, like I said, filtering and EQ that you can adjust on this.
Okay, cool. So is there, it sounds like,
my dog gave the vote of approval. Sorry about that.
No problem. Does this have, would you say that there's a specific like color to this, or is really the benefit of it being completely colorless?
No, there's definitely kind of a specific color to it, especially on the second channel. And I think what defines it is just the range of adjustability you have. And there's even this Moog designed multi-filter knob that, depending on how you have it adjusted, you can dial in like some fixed wah tones, almost get these like kind of Peter Green type of sounds if you're dialing it correctly. So that's one feature that makes it kind of unique that a lot of amps do not have.
Cool.
Yeah.
About how big is this thing?
What's the size of the box it's in? I want to say like, it's like probably a good like double pedal sized enclosure.
So it's not giant.
It's not giant, but it's larger than, say, a typical Boss pedal.
Right. So you're getting into like maybe like Strymon size.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison.
Okay. Can you get into? I'm pausing right there. Just I want to find out if you want to throw out a price or anything like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Can you get into how much this is going to run anybody out there who might be interested?
Yeah, pre-order price is $359, which may seem like a lot until you really, see this pedal and see what it's capable of doing and seeing all the features and just the amount of parts and labor that go into it. And no expense was spared with any of the components. So we're using all, top quality capacitors, resistors, really tight tolerances, highest quality available. Same goes for the pots and the jacks. Aluminum knobs on it, and there's 12 of those alone on the pedal.
Wow.
And there's a fair amount of time that goes into not only assembling, but then calibrating and testing the pedal. So, for each one, we're pretty meticulous in the build, and it's going to take a good, half a day of work or more. Then that price includes free domestic shipping and all the associated packaging. Anyone who's ordered pedals from me in the past knows that I always throw in some fun mystery Alchemy Audio goodies inside and case candy and whatnot. And it also does include a power supply because it runs on 9-volt AC, not DC. Oh. So similar to the ones that the Line 6 units take.
Right. Okay. I was just thinking in my head, it probably at glance is a bit of looking like some of the Line 6 units.
Yes.
Just from a size and that's a lot of knobs and all that stuff. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, so is this, would you say, I feel like this could be something for somebody who has probably more of a hi-fi sound either in their group or by themselves, as opposed to rat rockers.
Well, yeah, possibly. I mean, I think anyone who might lean toward that would probably just be kind of a guitar into an amp guy, and that's totally fine. I appreciate that. And, this might not be for them. I think this is a good companion to maybe enhance your existing rig or possibly replace it in some scenarios. Mm-hmm. And then I can also see this being really beneficial to any studio owners because, like I said, I did have some friends of mine take the prototype and track some bass and acoustic guitar tracks, and they loved it. So I think if you're looking for something that you can go direct into a board yet still maintain an amp-like quality to the sound, this would be a fantastic option. It
sounds like a killer option for a very, very affordable second rig. Anybody who's gigged out, especially if you're traveling, you got your amp bouncing around in the back of a van or something. I mean, things happen. And, if you don't, sometimes you don't always have the next band's amp to borrow, especially if you're last up and they bail on you.
Right. Yes.
which happens. So this could be, the idea of really, amp in a box, there's quite a few sort of quote unquote amp in a boxes out there. But they are typically very, very limited in what they're able to do compared to what you are building right now. It sounds
correct. Yeah, this was definitely a lot more versatile, and just the fact that it has 2 channels that you can access, so you can dial in some pretty different, distinct sounds, and yet still have it in a smaller pedal form.
Yeah. Could also be, I know that we've got a few venues out here where there are some pretty outstanding boards and really great sound guys behind them. And you could, sounds like you could really take advantage of their equipment and how they're using it as opposed to just straight in on a mic, like on a normal amp too.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, right on, man. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you giving me a holler and saying, hey, I got something new. And that door's open anytime.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. And why don't you give everybody all the information real quick?
Alchemy-audio.com. There's links in the store section to check out the product, a little bit more information about it, to do the ordering, along with a link to a YouTube video that we shot with reverb.com. They can also find it directly on reverb.com. If you just search for Lab Series preamp, it should come up. It is a limited run of 50. You'll see it's a pretty beautiful looking unit too, fully screen printed, and that's being done by our friends over at Disaster Area Designs. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about it, and I'm looking forward to getting these in people's hands.
Awesome. And the unit one more time is called
the Lab Series L5 preamp, and it's by Ion Electronics, assembled by Alchemy Audio.
Awesome. All right, man. Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Take care. So anyways, that was Johnny Balmer from Alchemy Audio. Johnny, thanks for giving us that information. And for anybody who's interested, you can contact Johnny at Alchemy Audio. And I'm sure he'd be very happy to hook you up with one of those awesome pedals that he's building now. It sounds like a pretty interesting unit.
Yeah, it sounds like a real cool pedal.
I got to look that up.
The original?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to, it's intriguing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's get on with it, shall we? Let's talk about our missing knobs. We're missing a bunch of knobs today. And I'm just like, crap, it's a little quiet in here. Again, I got Jared.
Well, yeah.
You
always have me.
Something.
I'm always here.
I know. But yeah, so life happens and it doesn't, all of the knobs that we've had on here and still have on here are great dudes, and we're missing them today.
Yep.
That's yes.
I said yep.
Oh, yep.
Sorry, man. I talk under my breath if you guys haven't noticed on this podcast.
You run out of breath too.
I do.
That's kind of like your MO.
Sometimes I run out of thought. Of course, everybody.
You just kind of go up the juice right there towards the end.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, let's go. Tony, you're our special guest today.
Yes.
What's going on in your music world?
Well, let's see. This week I took big pieces of plastic and made them into small pieces of plastic.
Okay.
But no, it's really kind of interesting. Doing what I do, I kind of get a chance to see what's happening in terms of what's selling. Because for instance, this past couple weeks I've had a run on. Things like the new Fender Offset series, the new Mustangs with the P90s, the new Duosonics.
Right, and there's a new an offset telly too, which
yeah, otherwise known as a Telemaster. They got into it a little bit later than the rest of the world, but cool guitar nonetheless. But yeah, the whole Offset series has been, I'm assuming, a pretty good seller for them, because I'm getting requests for people that want to customize.
That's awesome. When you see a new model, when you see a new model coming out, you're like, money signs just appear in your eyes, because everybody wants to customize that new, because they have an idea rolling in their head. They're like, man, I'm going to call Tony. I'm going to get me a.
You got to breathe, dude.
You can't help it. I want to get me an awesome pickguard.
I think he's excited about pickguards. Well, and that's just it. It's what I do. I mean, it's not for everyone. Some people want more traditional things. Some people want to go crazy out there. But it's a lot like the hot rod industry.
Jared likes the crazy stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy.
The jet boat and the sparkles and bass boat.
But that's good. But it's a lot like the hot rod industry. People want something a little bit different, or they want to change pickups, or they just want to experiment a little.
They want to feel like it's theirs.
Right.
Especially when you have something that is mass produced. I mean, the Telecaster is pick your favorite hot rod. It's the Model T hot rod where,
I'll take a 32 Ford.
32, anything. I was thinking of like the little buckets, little rat rods and stuff. Yeah. But it is the quintessential hot rod guitar, because you can customize every stinking part on it. And the idea that they've sold so many, you want yours to be yours, and the funny thing is, arguably the easiest thing to do and the most aesthetically differentiating is a pickguard.
Oh yeah,
I think it certainly gives it an instant look. I mean, if you can change out pickups, and they may or may not look much different than what you've already got. They'll probably sound different, of course. Right. But yeah, visually, there's lots of neat things that people are doing.
Yeah,
it's like rims and tires can change the whole look of the car.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it.
Well, that's just like Todd's Les Paul was a special.
Yeah.
I mean, it was basically a black on black pickguard, but now the gold on
Your
there.
shirt, I need that shirt. Your shirt matches it. Tony's wearing a Cowboy Custom, almost, Grand Ole Opry style with dual gold hollow bodies.
Yeah, they're kind of like Birdlands or something.
Yeah,
Jazz boxes. I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they play both kinds, country and western.
Right. Cool, man. Well, we'll get into all kinds of your awesome pickguard stuff in just a couple minutes.
So last week, you reiterated how you're not a big fan of the Stratocaster.
I'm not.
So it's been spinning in my head, man. I'm gonna take a Stratocaster, and it's what I'm gonna do. It's what I'm doing, and I'm gonna make it so versatile that you're going to like it.
That's what I don't like about it.
No, it's super mega. It's gonna be awesome.
If by versatile you mean you can take out at least one of the pickups and two of the knobs, and let's see what else. I mean, if you just start there,
remove the tremolo,
then we can talk.
Okay.
But see, the thing is, it's just not about the functionality. It's the whole feel of the guitar. Like too many curves, belly cut, elbow cut, like forearm.
I want to.
It is my kryptonite.
Here's what's new in my guitar world. This week, I bought an S1 switch, and I saw on a forum on Facebook where some guy had this ungodly spiderwebby bee's nest wiring harness drawing, and I'm like, I've got to make that. You need an S1 switch and you need a super switch.
Okay, for the listeners, including me, what are you talking about?
I don't know, man. The S1 switch, it's, you know what I'm talking about, right,
I know
Tony?
what you mean, yeah.
Maybe you can explain it a little better than I.
Don't leave me in the dark here, guys.
There's a button in the center of the switch.
Yes.
And you push the button. Well, it's not a switch. I'm sorry. It looks like a pot, and it's got a computer chip board underneath.
I don't know if it's a computer, but it's got something that
like a green thing
changes the switching, and
it's unbelievable. So
it is, because I can't believe it. I'm having trouble imagining it, so I can't believe it.
I don't know how it works either.
Is it the tone or the volume knob or whatever?
It's a volume.
But you press the center of it, and it engages the S1 switch.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So in some cases, Fender wires things a lot differently, model to model. But in some cases, it's to put all three pickups at the same time. Basically takes the place of a mini toggle or whatever.
Okay.
But they also have a little more sophisticated system that alters the switching and changes I think it goes to the super switch, which is another plate switch. And you get different combinations of things.
A super switch has 4 different
that's super switch
terminals of 5 tabs.
Is that what the S stands for? Super? Or spectacular?
Sweet.
Which one? I'm all sorts of confused now.
Or it could be silly.
It's going to be super. It's going to be super, and you're going to like the way it sounds. You may not like the way it feels and looks, but you're going to take it home and you're going to mess with it.
So you took
that's what you're going to do.
That I'm not a fan of and made it infinitely more complicated.
Yes.
I'm a brutalist. When I'm playing, I play heavy. I'm not great.
It's a Squier. It's good. It's cool.
I hack my way through the guitar.
I don't care, man.
Finesse is not my middle name.
I think you're gonna like this.
All right, I'll try.
Sometimes too many switches are a bad thing. Don't you think?
Tony, come on, man. I'm trying to make him like Stratocasters.
Well, I have to say, I've owned...
He's going to agree with me. Watch this.
I've owned and sold probably 30 or 40 Stratocasters in my years. I love them to start with.
They're like wah pedals. You're like, yeah and no. Oh, yeah. No.
I mean, the one that I held on to the longest was a Japanese hardtail.
Okay.
And
Early 80s?
It was probably mid 80s, probably.
Did that have dual pipes on it, or? Oh. What? It's like a motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
So let me make this abundantly clear. It is not that I don't like Stratocasters as far as I don't like a Stratocaster for me. Mm-hmm. I appreciate what they do. I think that they are lovely to look at, most of them.
Sounds like a disclaimer here.
This is a big disclaimer. but I just want to make sure, because look, I don't like it when I appreciate that people have their opinions, but I don't appreciate when people apply their opinions to me.
Yeah.
And so I just want to make it clear, I am 100% not doing that to anybody who actually really likes Stratocasters.
I like it.
There's a lot of people that do.
There's a couple. They've sold a couple.
My whole goal is
at least a dozen.
My whole goal is here.
If you like some, I'm behind it. I don't care if it's a orange BC Rich Wardlock or like. If you love it, awesome.
I want you to say, I can't believe that's coming out of a Strat. That's all that's what I'm trying to do here.
Well, that would
I can't believe this sound is coming out of the Strat. This is so cool.
All right. No, yeah, dude. Like,
yeah.
Arguably, some of the greatest rock music in history has come out of a Strat. So it isn't about the guts of the Strat. It's, I don't know. It's just,
it's
some
just
people
not,
like to wear loafers.
You're not comfortable with it.
I don't like, it doesn't. Yeah. It is. I'm not. I pick it up and it feels like a foreign object to me. That's the thing. That's how I have to describe this moving forward.
Okay. Yeah.
Does it make you feel icky?
A little bit. It makes me feel it. Maybe it makes me feel a little bit inadequate. Kind of like a Jaguar. Like, I love Jaguars are beautiful. I think they're gorgeous and they make some amazing tones. But I pick it up and I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. Give me a Jazzmaster. I'm more comfortable with.
Yeah.
But it's too much. It's too much.
When I have a big giant jazz guitar, I think that's the way I feel too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I have yet to see you actually play a big giant anything. You have the tiniest. Everything you have is short scale, and it's tiny guitars. You like tiny guitars, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
He's overcompensating.
Because he's a huge guy. Yeah. He's like, I don't need a big guitar.
Or is that undercompensating?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So you put in, you Radio Shacked a Strat. Awesome. Okay.
Yay.
Let's see. So me, I started working on a new pedal, or I started working on the graphics for a new pedal. So I'm going to build a new pedal. I'm not mass producing pedals. I'm not a pedal builder, but I like making my own. And usually what I do is I say, okay, I think I've identified this pedal, of course, after like 26 hours of research, because I love doing that. And I said, yes, that's the one. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just build one. So I was doing that. That's a fun part of because it's the same thing as what we're talking about, customizing a guitar. Mm-hmm. I love getting other people's pedals, but I really like the idea of building my own. I get to name it and I get to do those things too. So I like having a mix of those things. That was lovely.
That was not much going on in your guitar world.
Well, there is a lot more, but that was just the
milestone.
Most recent thing.
Nice.
Yes. Okay, so Tony, let's do your 4 on the floor.
4 on the floor.
Hold on.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 4 on the floor.
Okay, now.
All right. In no particular order, I'll make it abundantly clear. I am not typically a pedal guy. I do like some, and over the years I've tried a lot of different ones, and some I've really liked and some not so much. But if I'm looking for, my desert island gig rack, pedal board, whatever you want to call it, there's 4 that stood out, and I'm gonna, being first time guest, gonna request a fifth gear overdrive.
Okay.
Because it's 4 on the
Sure.
floor.
Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna put it.
Give us 5 pedals.
The fifth is
for the non-pedal guy. That's
the fifth is more of a utility piece.
Okay.
And I'll explain when I get down there.
All right. We'll check with the judges and see if that's allowed once you get there.
Where are they at?
I see no judges.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. First off, the piece that I really really like is the full tone Supatrem. I originally got my Supatrem because I had a couple of amps that did not have tremolo built into it, and I started playing around a little bit with some of the amps that I did have tremolo with in. And what's kind of cool about the pedal, it's a very good sounding. I mean, it sounds very much like Fender tremolo, but when you mix that at a different rate than say something on an amp that has tremolo, you can get that kind of Johnny Marr Smith's "How Soon Is Now" kind of stuttering going on. Right. So that's kind of a cool thing. It's not something that you use all the time, but it's certainly kind of a cool effect.
Sure.
The other piece that I've owned for forever, I guess, is the Dunlop Rotovibe. Excuse me, and that, in terms of kind of neat effects, you can get anything from kind of a phasing to
I love a vibe pedal.
Yeah, it's just really cool. Little tricky to use because it's got that little sidekick switch to go from rotary to vibrato, but that's a cool one. A must-have is the Voodoo Lab Sparkle Drive, and for a live situation, I find that's just what I like in terms of when you're kicking into a lead or something. You can get a nice boost out of it, and generally I use it. For those that don't know what the Sparkle Drive is, it's got a dirty side and a clean side, and you can
kind of like Jared.
That's right. He's mostly dirty side, I think. But you can mix them, so you can have a truly boosted clean signal when you want to take it up for a lead and that sort of thing. So I've used one of those forever. My fourth choice is I have a Vox Union Jack wah pedal.
Oh, cool.
And it was a limited edition that came out years ago. My wife bought it for me because I said, I want that.
Yeah.
And so that's the one time she listened
Union
to
Jack?
The British flag.
Oh, okay.
And so it's got Union Jack graphics on it. It's a Vox wah pedal.
Oh, okay.
It'll do anything that any other one does. And then fifth gear, the utility pedal.
Okay.
Is something that I purchased when I first started using 2 amps, and I needed essentially a buffer amp or unity gain amp to feed both sides. And I still use them.
Splitting, you're not running stereo.
No, you're not running stereo because you could do that with a pedal.
Because that's just silly, isn't it?
Unless you have a Strat with an S1 switch.
Yeah, and 2 orange amps.
But it's a VHT valvulator.
Oh,
What?
It is it's kind of counterintuitive because most unity gain or buffer amps are op amp based. Mm-hmm. This one actually uses a tube in place of an op amp. It also has, as a side benefit, it's got plugs that you can plug in your pedals to.
Right.
It's a power supply, but I used it primarily for just feeding 2 amplifiers.
Right.
Or if you need to feed go in direct into a board.
now op amp is a popular term that gets thrown around, more associated with fuzz pedals. Often, for the listeners, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, what I consider an op amp is basically it can be a chip, generally in general terms, and essentially think of it as a mini amplifier.
Okay.
It basically takes the signal, and in this case, it's a 1-to-1. So, one level going in comes out the same level, except in this case, it splits it into 2 separate things.
Is the main utility of this just to, not lose power because you're going to 2 different sources?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it does 2 things. It splits the signal and keeps it unity gain,
Right.
1-to-1.
Normalizes.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. It also changes the impedance from a high impedance signal to a low impedance signal.
Oh, okay.
So it does work a lot of magic, and if you're using a 2-amp setup, it works great. So that was just my.
Which
my
2 amps
bonus.
are you using?
At this point in time, now when I first started using those, that was with 2 Laney VC30s, which were their attempt to knock off an AC30.
Okay.
Nowadays, I have a Dr. Z Maserati, and Italiano, and
Mucho gusto.
and I have a couple of different Voxes that I use, but my primary one is one of the AC15 hand wireds.
Oh, cool.
So those are a little
60, like a hand wire, like an old vintage one.
No. It's a newer series. They actually released a series of AC15s, probably AC4s, and I know an AC30, and they're hand wired. So it's point to point wiring.
Yep.
Turret boards.
Right.
It's boutique level, right?
Yeah.
Is that a recent?
I would say they've all come out within the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay. Because I mean, almost any AC you get now is like Chinese boards.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this is I think these are made in Vietnam.
yeah.
But they're true. If you pull
That's
them
cool.
apart, they're
Okay.
it's a point to point wiring.
Right.
And they call them the hand wired series.
Well, right on.
If it's made well, it's made well.
Do you know what kind of, like, I'm assuming that's a premium price on those? Is there
Yeah,
like
I mean, I think they're at least 50% more than the standard AC30s or AC15s.
Right.
But really nice. I mean, I've owned. In fact, before I bought this one, I had one of the AC15 CCs, the whatever the
the C1
C1s.
AC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's what I just sold, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're not a bad amp.
It was a great amp, but I just needed other things.
I mean, it happens.
Like a new Gibson.
Yes, with a gold pickguard. But yeah, it's there's a noticeable difference, and it's the AC15 C1 is or was, I guess, a little more typical. They used a little different circuitry in the hand wired one, so it's probably closer to what was would have been in the late 50s, early 60s.
Cool.
Nice.
Okay. Well, that wraps up our 4 on the floor with the 5th gear. Cool. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Nice.
So I think I want to just discuss a little bit about why we brought you on this show. I mean, there's a couple reasons. One, Jared was telling me, you got to get Tony the Pickguardian on the show.
Yeah, of course.
You got to get him on the show.
You got to
He's
get him on the
really
show.
Great guy.
He is.
I
stand behind that.
I said okay, and we tried to get you on the show a little bit ago, and hey, things don't always work out, and that's okay. I think it's really interesting what people do, and we focus here on small craft. Almost all of our guests are guys who are just usually start something out of a passion project, and then just it goes crazy, or maybe it doesn't go crazy, but it goes well enough for them to continue to do it. Yours was a very specific thing. I think most people say, I'm going to do pedals or I'm going to do guitars, and there's a pretty wide range of stuff you can do there. So when I found out that there's a guy who just makes pickguards, I'm like, well, I got to find out what the story is here.
Visually, it's a bold thing to do.
It is a bold thing.
Yes.
So I also really love the fact whenever we can, to some degree, I'm starting to feel a little bit like the Huell Hauser of Ohio guitar. Honestly, I'm not going out of my way to find all the guitar people in Ohio. They just are happening.
There's a lot here. There's a lot going on here in Ohio. As far as guitars and
pedal makers and
a lot. I mean,
and even just in Central Ohio.
Yeah,
it's amazing to me. But
I kind of feel like it's almost like Nashville's like little cousin or something. You know,
it's it is interesting, and I'm the same as you. I'm kind of amazed at times that if I'm looking at something and it says, oh well, we're up in Cleveland or wherever, and I think it's a neat. I suppose it's that way over most of the country, especially in towns like Nashville or Austin or whatever.
It can also be the new car thing too. So, the minute you get a new model car, you instantly notice everybody else who's got one of those. Like, oh, look at all the people that think like me. Aren't we great? So, I doubt that it is totally unique to Ohio. It's just something that just seems to be happening. So I'm running with it, and I love supporting anything that's local for wherever you're at. You happen to be local right now, so tell us about how you got started in guitar itself, and then we'll progress to where you are now.
Okay. Well, then we have to set the Wayback Machine. Back when I was a little child.
So you're watching Ed Sullivan live.
Oh, you're killing me. Actually, that's not too far off. Although I was probably too young to remember. But yes. But that now that you mentioned that, the Beatles have always been, probably have had the largest impact. John Lennon in particular, on what I play, what I like, in terms of music.
It's interesting whenever somebody qualifies like, well, first Beatles, and then immediately they say which one,
and that is unique to the Beatles. I think say, well,
that's true.
I love Keith.
No. I mean, that's a given. You're always going to go with that one.
But it's I think you're right. I mean, people say, well, I'm a McCartney man, or I like George. He was the quiet one. Ringo was a blast. But I guess. I don't know why I felt the need to clarify that, but
no, that's totally cool. I think it's great when people do that, because that actually tells a lot about who you are. It's something that's kind of general, but that says a lot.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, so going back to then, my sister had taken piano and organ lessons, and I said, that's not for me. So my mom and dad bought her. And it was a horrible guitar, as I remember now, as a Sears, probably Silvertone acoustic guitar with action 5 inches off the fretboard.
Insta blisters.
So she gave up playing guitar pretty quickly. It was in the era of folk music and Joni Mitchell and everything. Man. So she wanted to be the next Joni Mitchell, I think. But eventually she gave up on the guitar. So there was a guitar laying around the house, and I said, well, I can mess around with that a little bit. And slowly but surely, my uncle had given me a songbook, a Beatles songbook. There you go. It goes back to the Beatles, and a couple of other things that he had bought, and I just started, plucking away, learning, CFG,
right,
EAD, occasional E minor, and I just kept up with it. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've always played guitar, and eventually got tired of hurting my fingers, and I think the first guitar I got was an Epiphone, probably.
Now, what era Epiphone though? Like what?
It was a Japanese Epiphone, probably from the early 70s. Okay. So it was actually a pretty good instrument.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the history when Epiphone, when Gibson bought Epiphone, and then, how did the quality of Epiphone? I'm sorry, I'm veering off here, but it's in my head, and I had to ask. I thought maybe you'd know.
Yeah, Gibson bought Epiphone, and that was probably, I want to say mid-60s, maybe 65, 60. I don't know exactly the date. And for a period of time, they made a number of things. Actually, it was earlier than that. It was early 60s. And for a period of time, Epiphones were made right alongside Gibson's up in Kalamazoo.
Right.
In fact, he had some, I forget the model was cornets or something like that.
Yeah,
which is basically
familiar.
Essentially an Epiphone version of a Les Paul Jr. and a couple of others. And I think by the time the end of the 60s came along, they either sold off to Norlin or Norlin may have bought Gibson and Epiphone, and they decided that the Epiphone line should be made overseas in Japan. And there were, I've had over the years owned a number of them from that era, and they're very good instruments.
So it was a big step up from the Sears.
Oh, it was a major step up. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Hey, I got some trivia.
Trivia?
Yeah.
Ding 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 ding.
Okay, so Epiphone, the guy who made it. I hope I'm not butchering these things. Anastasios Stathopoulos.
Yes.
He was the founder.
I wonder if he was Greek.
I knew that guy.
He is Greek. And this is cool. So the name Epiphone is a combination of Eponymodonus.
That's easy for you to say.
Epaminondas Stathopoulos.
That was his son?
No, that is the two proper words for phone and voice.
Oh.
So the short version of Epaminondas is Epi, and then Stathopoulos is
A phone.
from the Greek version voice.
Oh,
So
right.
Epiphone or voice phone,
Voice
something
phone.
like that. Something like a little Wikipedia for you there.
Yeah,
Everybody
nice.
who's listening.
If Apple was doing it, it would be the iVoice phone.
Yes, there you go.
That is
voice phone.
interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry. All right. So
let's fast
history on
forward.
Epi.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So play. I started playing originally from Youngstown, northeastern Ohio, and was in college and hung out with other guys that were interested in playing, and so we had a so-called punk bar that we all went to and played at, and it was a fun time. I mean that is in terms of music. That's really where I cut my teeth.
Where's the 70s?
No, this is
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
Ramones and
Yeah, Ramones were in the
Late 70s.
in the 76, 77.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, all the way. They continued to play. In fact, a funny story about the Ramones, and thus I digress. There was one night we were all Ramones fans, and they played in Cleveland on a Friday, in Youngstown on a Saturday, and in Pittsburgh on
Holy
a Sunday.
moly.
Wow.
We went to all three shows,
Oh man.
and I swear I could not hear properly for at least 2 or 3
That's
weeks.
awesome.
But yeah, it was just that constant,
Yeah.
Nice.
very loud band, very fun band.
That's when you know you had a good time.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I got to see a lot of the early new wave bands and
Right.
and punk bands, if you will, all the way through that. I moved to Columbus back in '88. Oof, a long time ago, and I tried to stay connected to the music scene a little bit, and there were a number of people that I got to know over the years. And it was difficult to find time to continue to play out and that sort of thing. So I was looking for a way to stay connected to the music community, and that's what I really like about what I do with Pickguardian, is I get to talk to fellow musicians and manufacturers and things on a daily basis, and so I really enjoy that aspect of it. But how I actually started is I'm one of those people that likes to customize things, whether it's changing out pickups or a little different look or what have you. And I had a number of guitars that I wanted to customize. So, I mean, I did what everyone did at the time, is contacted one of 2 or 3 companies that made, I would call them generic pickguards, and of course you'd get them, and you had a 50-50 chance they might fit, they might not. You'd have to drill new holes.
Yeah.
And my whole thing was, well, this is kind of silly. Why wouldn't you get something that you don't have to drill into? And especially if you're talking a vintage instrument or a new instrument, you don't want to go in and do that. So I started with actually the first guard set that I made was for one of my Rickenbackers. That was out of necessity because Rick guards are notorious for cracking, and the material is relatively easy to find. It's just standard acrylic or plexiglass, whatever you want to call it. And so I just figured out a way to duplicate them, and it was it's certainly not rocket science, but it's there is a learning curve.
Right, sure.
I will tell you that, especially when it comes to drill bits and plexiglass.
Sure, that all costs money.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But so I started with that, and then I had a number of other people that said, "Well, we'd like to, can you duplicate this?" I said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And sure enough, I mean, the same basic procedure worked for everything like that. And that's when we talked earlier a little bit about, I was experimenting with the internet at the time and set up a website and primarily listed, I think, what did I have on there? Guitars that I was interested in, the Rickenbacker stuff, the Armands, and Reverend guitars. 3 things that I really, have enjoyed most of the models that they've put out.
Reverend's getting... they're getting some attention here. I mean, last week we talked about Reverend.
Yeah. Okay.
So set up a
this
website.
Isn't the Reverend podcast.
Yes.
So
When was this, by the way? When did you, what year? Because, the internet's only been around for 20 years.
Yeah,
right?
it was about 12 years ago. 12
Yeah.
years. So it was early on in the infancy of the internets. But so I set that up, and I was just shocked initially that people would contact me, send me pickguards to duplicate, send me money to do the work, and they don't know me from anyone,
including sparkly stuff, right?
Including the sparkly stuff is just for you. I got your special stock. But I've expanded the line, started doing more different things. I think I have a really good working relationship with most of the major companies. I get referrals from people, that I can't believe, some of the biggest companies out there. And I don't think I can, ask for anything better than that. I mean, that's,
Sure.
When you get...
So when you're getting calls from them, they're not saying, "Hey, we need you to do 2,000 guards."
Well, I did do that one time.
Oh boy!
In working, I work with the Gibson Repair Shop quite a bit. I do a lot of arch top guards and some other projects for them. But I had gone down down to Nashville, and I said, "Hey, can we do a quick tour?" And I got to meet a number of people there, but one of them was their I guess, research and development, R&D department.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were doing Guitars of the Week.
Okay.
And so they actually one year released. They had planned to do 52 guitars that year.
Holy mackerel!
And those were runs of
like one-offs, or
no? They were runs of. I want to say they were at that time 100.
Wow.
Maybe 100 or 200.
That's a pretty cool marketing concept, actually.
I don't know how successful it was, but there were some very cool, and there were some weird things there too.
I mean, at some point you're going to start
the collectors
at the bottom of the barrel.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one that comes to mind is the reverse flying
I was
V.
just going to say that.
Well, the collectors, they fall over each other trying to get these things.
Yeah.
But so what they did is I had an idea for, I called it an LP 295. So it's kind of a cross between a Les Paul and an ES 295.
Yeah. Those are cool.
Yeah. So we just talked about it a little bit, and their R&D guy said, "Hey, why don't you put a couple samples together?"
Wild.
Basically, so it's the floral print on a like an ES 295 guard.
Yeah.
And I sent some samples down, gave them the concept for the guitar, which is basically a gold top. They changed a few things. I wanted it
That's
more
the
like
Chet Atkins model, right?
Well, the ES295 is it's like an ES175.
Okay.
It's a fat body, single cut.
And Chet Atkins is gold top with a floral guard, I believe, with a cutaway. It's got a sharp horn cutaway.
I don't think that it had a floral guard.
Okay.
You talking about the Gibson Chet Atkins?
Yeah. I got to look that up.
Look it up.
I could be speaking out of my
trivia
pie hole. Yeah, insert expletive.
Because they did two different models of Chet Atkins. They did one that had a bound tortoise guard, and then they did another one that had an armrest.
Yep.
And kind of like a Trini Lopez guard, except it was silver. You're maybe thinking of a Mary Ford.
Oh, okay.
They did a limited.
Okay.
Talking about a dozen.
I must have saw
guitars.
him playing that one time. I don't know how I'm associating him with that.
Well, interestingly, I forget the guitar player's name from Mastodon.
Yeah.
Actually plays one of those. The LP 295s. Now he called it a Mary Ford Les Paul, but it's not really.
But he's in Mastodon.
But it's okay. So anyhow, I made some samples, and the next thing I know, I get a purchase order for 1,100 Pickguards from Gibson. It's like, now this is before I had my shop set up, so I was doing this out of my house. Uh-oh. And I think my wife was about ready to divorce me by the time that project ended up. So I had essentially 3 or 4 weeks to produce 1,100 guards.
So you had machines going on all day, and they were...
Well, and this is when I was still working a full-time job.
Uh-oh.
So I had every one of my friends...
ES295.
Yes.
That was what we're talking about?
Yeah. Except mine is an LP 295.
Okay.
Look up...
it's got a trapeze.
Yes. Now that's what I wanted to do.
Okay. Because it has a floral guard on it.
Yeah, but if you look up there, see in the upper
if you're
right-hand
driving,
corner.
Look up to your upper right-hand corner.
The upper right-hand corner is an LP
Yeah,
295.
okay, I got you. Yeah.
So it's basically a Les Paul version.
Yeah.
Of the ES295.
Smaller body.
Yep.
Semi-hollow.
Are you
Nope.
Fully hollow.
No.
Not
solid
hollow?
body.
That one's it's got F holes in it.
Yeah.
In your upper right-hand corner?
Yeah.
Turn that around again here.
I'm thinking maybe we need to get Tony some eyeglass cleaner right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is not an LP 295.
Yeah, this is
That one has
one that I was talking about right there, or down here.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about the
I'll
one.
edit this part out.
Pass the bottle.
Now he says that, but
do a search for Gibson LP-295. And that is
That's the one that you made?
That's the concept that I sent to Gibson, and what resulted in me having to make a bunch of
1,100 of them.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So the difference is that's a solid body. It's the solid body version of the ES
295.
295.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha. Clicked. Everything's on.
Now, what they did, I wanted P90s on mine. I'm a P90 fan. And I wanted a trapeze tailpiece.
Right.
Well,
That's got a Bigsby on it.
that got nixed. They said, well, we wanted to do a Bigsby, so we're using a Bigsby. And our humbucker equipped models outsell P90 models 4 or 5 to 1 or something,
Right.
some ridiculous number.
Right.
So I was just happy that they actually made the guitar. I have one of them that was
Oh, no
that's
kidding?
part of the deal. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So those were guitars of the week. They were a little less ambitious that year, so they only did 12 or 13 of them.
My favorite part about that is the slanted traps.
Yes.
What would you call that? Polygons, slanted polygons. What?
Yeah, they're what you would find. Well, essentially, what the inlays on a ES295.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're split. They're split traps.
Yeah, split traps. We'll go with that. Anyways, those are cool. Those are on a couple other models that they did.
Yes.
394, I think. Now I got to look that up.
You
too.
got me.
Anyways, continue. Sorry, digression.
So you had all these pickguards to do.
Yes.
And I'm still trying to get a confirmation from you if you had machines going at all times after you come home from your normal job.
Yeah. I mean, I would
noisy, and she was like, oh,
345,
turn those
get
machines
345,
off.
sorry.
Yes.
I can't let that go. I have to.
It has to be established.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I would come home after 5 o'clock or whatever, and cut a bunch of guards. I'd have friends come over. We'd do the decaling. I'd take them out back and spray them.
Oh man!
So because these were clear with the decal applied and shot with lacquer on the back, and then we had an assembly line.
Cool look.
Basically sanding and polishing, and it was I had probably 5 or 6 of my very good friends come over, and they thank God they helped out because the job wouldn't have gotten done.
So did that particular situation maybe catapult you to move out of the house?
Yes,
get a big. I could see that.
That was pretty much the watershed moment.
Yeah. I love your shop, by the way, and you're an appointment only. It's not a public walk-in.
Yeah, it's not. But if somebody wants to come down, if they're local, they can contact me by email. It is a
fun circus when you go into that place. There's plastic everywhere.
Yes.
I go in there, and I've been at 5 or 6, 7 times, and I still go in this shop.
Breathe.
And look everywhere because there's plastic everywhere. And there's always some sort of material. I'm like, I can make a pickguard for this guitar. And there's the sparkle over there. And you've got all these different colored sparkles. And it's mesmerizing. I love your shop, man.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. I mean, it's
machinery everywhere.
Yeah, it's a mess. 9 times out of 10. And
I never said that.
Well, I do. I will confirm that.
It's fun, man.
But the crazy thing is, I try to clean it up at least
once
every week or two, once a year, even whether it needs it or not. But 15 minutes later, it looks exactly the same.
Right.
So, but I really enjoy what I'm doing, and it's gotten to a point now where I was doing it on a part-time basis for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and it got to a point where I decided that I couldn't do both. Because orders were coming in, I was, burning a candle at both ends.
Yeah.
So I left my my job of 25 years, and decided to do this full time.
Cool.
And here we sit.
That is, that's a cool story. That's the cool story, man. Like, I mean, you were a grave digger, and now you're a pickguard guy. I mean, that's
what'd you
awesome.
I was with a local dry cleaning company for 25 years. I was vice president.
Yeah, this is a better choice.
Yeah, well, it's I actually learned a lot. I honed my marketing skills over the years there.
You were a vice president over there?
Ah, yes, Vice President Jetson. That might be too young for you.
No, I remember the Jetsons.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. One of the unique things about what you do is you do custom, obviously, and custom usually means a lot of weird requests.
Yeah, sometimes.
So I would like to know maybe a couple stories about some of the stranger things that have come your way and or the more difficult things. I know when I was in the shop, you showed me the difference between, what was like a $50 pickguard and what was like a $500 pickguard.
Oh, there are no such thing as $500.
$400 pickguard.
No,
$300 pickguard.
Well, yeah, $200 to $300.
That's a lot of money, man.
It's a lot of money, but those would be the bound archtop guards. Well, they would go on a $10,000 or $15,000 instrument.
Sure.
So
yeah,
it's
DR. I'm not. So to be clear, he's very fair on price, but that was a special thing,
right? And I do a lot of bound guards, and they are time consuming. And the
one that you showed me was actually like a quintuple bound guard or something.
5-ply.
Crazy.
Yeah, it had 5-ply binding on it. And yeah, they're difficult, and you can get all the way to the end and still have a mistake, and you get to start over.
Yeah.
So the material is expensive, and the labor hours are really. I've got 5 or 6 going right now at the shop that are just it's fun to do those things because it's a departure from what I normally would do, which is working with multiply plastics and that sort of thing. This is working with real celluloid and putting binding like that you'd find on the edge of guitars. And these are usually for arch tops or jazz boxes and that sort of thing. So they go on pretty high end guitars.
Yeah.
So
can you tell us some of the dangers?
Well, hold on. Before you get into the danger zone.
Oh, yeah, you're
cautionary
right.
tape. So interesting. You were about to tell us some interesting stories, and then I derailed you with the most expensive.
And then I almost went on to something else there.
So interesting requests. Well, the one request that I get a lot, and there's a couple of things. I'll go through the
Mud
list.
flap girls engraved.
That would be cool.
You haven't gotten
I haven't gotten that, believe it or not.
Me? That was the first thing I thought of.
Wow. That could be part of the inlays.
That would be really cool, actually. Okay, anyways.
So, common requests, one of which is totally false. The one thing that people request, it just happened this week, which is why it came to mind, is someone was looking for white Bakelite, claiming that Fender used white Bakelite on their white guards.
Now, are you saying white, like a special white, or just white in general?
White phenolic material,
okay,
also known as Bakelite. So
right.
50s Tele guards, for instance.
It's like the first plastic that was ever
right, exactly.
produced.
Yep.
Yeah. And Fender indeed did use black Bakelite on their black guards in the 50s. When they switched to the white guards, everyone thinks that they used white Bakelite, which is not the case. They used probably something that was closer to what
that stuff's pretty brittle, isn't it?
It was polystyrene,
right?
But standard PVC plastic, polyvinyl chloride is as close as you can find to polystyrene.
Right.
So that's one common request that I get a chuckle every time they say, well, I want some
now,
stuff.
do you think that they're looking for the actual material from a keeping it original standpoint, or for the aesthetic? Because the Bakelite does have I don't want to say abnormalities, but it isn't always uniform in its aesthetic.
It's really soft too.
It can be swirly.
Oh no, it's actually very brittle.
Yeah.
What?
It's basically what's called Bakelite now.
I don't know anything.
Is a phenolic material, which means that it's little bits and pieces of cloth, I guess, that are embedded in a resin.
Well, I said that because I believe
You're thinking of Play-Doh.
I think he might be right. No, the Stratocaster covers
Are you thinking of
too,
SpaghettiOs?
right? No, the covers are also made Bakelite. The ones that wore out, like
now that
5 or 6 strums,
and
that's where I get the soft idea at, because that stuff wore out quick.
I think it in the case of like pickup covers, and they did make knobs out of white Bakelite.
It wore out really fast,
and they did, and they cracked, and it's it's kind of the nature of the beast. But the modern Bakelite that I use, I find it's pretty rigid. It chews up my router bits terribly.
Yeah,
I mean I just can't get over how badly it does that.
For the listeners, just to kind of get a handle on, like, if you are not familiar with Bakelite, if you think of an old 30s, 40s, 50s radio or television set or a car, most of the knobs on those were all made of Bakelite.
Mm-hmm. Even jewelry from the 20s and 30s.
Bangles, all those kind of things. But for the dudes listening who aren't wearing antique bangles. Anything in a typically a pre-mid 50s car is going to have Bakelite parts on it.
That's true.
And or an old radio thing.
They took over the industry with plastics and stuff. And
yeah. Well, I mean, after the graduate,
days.
For sure.
Yeah.
Plastics.
I was thinking about that
Got
too.
one word for you.
Plastics.
Okay.
Plastics.
Okay, carry on.
Okay. Other unusual requests. I had a person request. They wanted to do from neck to bridge Strat single coil pickups right next to each other.
What?
I don't make this stuff up.
8 of them?
I forget. It was either 6 or 7, maybe 8.
I've seen a couple things on the internet like that I thought were like
Photoshopped.
jobs.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually did that. I don't think I got that job because I probably sent back some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's well, I think Nigel from Spinal Tap had something similar to that.
Yeah.
But so those are the kind. Most of the people that I work with, I think, have a pretty good grasp on what is doable,
right?
What is realistic, and there's this fringe out there that comes up with some really wild ideas, but I try to entertain them.
How about like material wise? Does anybody come to, aside from Bakelite? Does anybody come to you with like hardwoods or glass or any like?
I've done some work with wood, and it is a different animal.
Yeah.
And so I try not to do that. There's a couple of companies that use a kind of a laminated material.
Yeah.
So it's plastic on the bottom with wood on the top layer. And they do a really good job, so I usually refer them on to there.
Yeah.
Another common request is gold anodized.
Yeah.
And there's a company that I refer because cutting metal is completely, it requires different machinery than cutting plastic.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of, there's at least one, maybe 2 companies that still do anodizing.
The Damascus model for the boon of the anodized Pickguards.
I have no problem with. I think anodized aluminum guards are
cool.
Well, they look good and they're like the
durable
ultimate shield.
Yeah.
It's a nice way to do black on black too, so that it doesn't just kind of look a little flattish.
Yeah, because there is a little bit of a grain to it.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds of different colors that you can actually anodize with. But it's just one of those things that it's very specialized.
Yeah. Well, the one that you did for me, like I was considering whether or not I should do a plexiguard or a gold anodized on that one, but I wanted to kind of keep it a little older school. So
yeah. I think what we did with yours was certainly more along the lines of a Gretsch guard or even an early Rickenbacker guard.
Yeah.
So I think it works really well.
Awesome. So how about, do you see, like where do you see what you're doing going? That may be an open, too broad of a question, but do you feel like people are starting to push the limits on the custom pickguard, or is it, or are people saying like I want to keep to the old school with a little bit of flavor?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what I see, I mean, there's a couple of different types of customers. There's a customer that likes very traditional things,
right?
And maybe they're trying to replace either a damaged or missing part. Old Gibsons and old, they want to do a nice 5-ply material and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's another group of people that want to try something different, or they're looking, going for a different look, or maybe they're changing out pickups. And then I think there's another group that had a certain guitar when they were growing up, and they're trying to replicate
right
what they had as a youth. So it is interesting, and I find myself and I find what I do going in all those directions.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, we're getting to an age now of a lot of the old, even late 50s, early 60s models, where the plastic, which was celluloid at the time, is disintegrating.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for ways to preserve the look and functionality of the instrument. That's why I do a lot of archtop guards, because those, what I've found is the thicker the celluloid, the more likely it is going to start to gas off and disintegrate. And I mean, I've had people send me literally a bag of celluloid dust by the time it gets to me.
Yeah, I have I've had a couple of early 60s SGs, and those Pickguards are really expensive to replace original. And the reason is because I believe they are celluloid.
Yeah,
right.
Well, they would be.
And they bow and they distort. They
shrink.
They shrink. And then, me, I didn't really know much about plastic. I tried to heat it up, and it just,
dude, you could have set your whole house on fire.
I know, and the smell went into my brain, and it stayed there for days,
maybe years.
Right? I think I'm affected by it. No, but no, seriously though, it's really,
Well, let me kind of segue into something with that, because you're talking about the dangers, right?
Well, kind of.
Okay, because that's what some of you were brought up.
There's a couple of different things
of, like, so you want to do a pickguard, maybe do's and don'ts
for someone to do at home.
For someone to either if you're gonna try to mess with your own pickguard,
and what not to put in a laser.
Yes. Yes.
Because everybody's getting these lasers now.
Yeah.
A big word of caution with words of caution. If you are using a laser cutter, do not use PVC-based plastic in it. One, it doesn't cut very well. Two, it emits a chlorine gas, which if you breathe enough of it, it will kill you.
Wow.
So you have to, with lasers, that's a big warning. So acrylic materials like plexiglass, and I even stock some acrylic multiply materials. They're safe to use, but anything that's PVC based, you definitely don't want to put in a laser.
Interesting.
Celluloid material, I mean, right now, about the only celluloid that's readily available is like multiply tortoise material.
Right.
And I mean, I do it myself. I still, if I'm drilling through it with a slightly dull bit, or if I'm cutting it and the router bit lifts a little bit and doesn't cut all the way through, it will smoke up.
Really?
Yeah. So that's always kind of a challenge, and especially if it's very fresh material.
Yeah.
It tends to have a lot more of the menthol, which I guess is the solvent that they use for celluloid, and it just it's nasty stuff.
So why would anybody choose to use celluloid? I'm assuming it's for like a super vintage that they want to keep correct.
No, I think, well, in terms of tortoise, I don't think anything else looks like real celluloid.
Okay.
Tortoise
well,
material.
Now so we're talking about tortoise. There's kind of like two kinds of tortoise, right? There's the translucent sort of yellowy and blacky with a little bit of brown tortoise, and then there's the opaque.
Well, yeah, let's go back. What we'll call it multiply tortoise.
Okay.
Stuff that Fender
right.
uses.
Think Jaguar.
So anything. So there's essentially there's probably dozens of varieties, but the two that come to mind are what Fender used in the '60s, and the modern equivalent today is a tortoise mint, black mint.
Yeah.
And then there's what they use now, which is a little more brownish with yellow specks, and that's tortoise parchment, black parchment. I stock both of those because I get probably I still probably do more 60s guards than modern stuff, but either way. So I think what people are trying to do, especially with the 60s material, and if it's for a vintage piece, or even if it's for a newer piece that they want to have more of a vintagey look, is they want to use real celluloid material.
Yeah.
The other option in terms of tortoise is some particularly nasty looking stuff, which is essentially screen printed, and in my opinion and most other people's opinion, just, you know,
it doesn't look right.
Well, from 50 feet away, maybe, but when you're up on it,
it's too close together. I don't. That's a lack for.
Well, it's pixelated. Now, yeah,
it looks awful.
That would be termed a Dalmatian tortoise.
Okay.
And there is.
I just showed Tony a photo of the sort of amber, almost like a translucent amber with real dark fluidy spotting on it.
Right. And that's typically used on, well, it certainly was used, you know, on early models like in the 30s and 40s,
right,
on acoustic guitars. Some of those materials are still available. I have, for instance, some fire stripe tortoise that is actual celluloid.
That just picked a couple of people's ears up. They're like, I want some fire stripe tortoise. Fire.
So a lot of those materials, because they're not laminated, work better on acoustic instruments because
right,
it's very thin material. So even when you're looking at, the multiplay tortoise, it's made up of thin layers that have been laminated together. People always ask, well, if I get, you know, this, there are a couple of, I guess they're epoxy based products. One is called Tortoise, Tortis, and there's another brand name out there, and it looks okay. I think it's a reasonable substitute for the real deal. But in some cases, you just can't. You know, I use, if I'm doing other acoustic guards, either I have the fire stripe. I think I have some of the Dalmatian tortoise that you had pointed out, and then I also use what is essentially like a Fender medium pick material, and that is, you know, for an acoustic guitar, I think it's real important to keep that.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those materials are also available in thicker, which I use for the archtop guards. So it's like 1/8 of an inch thick.
So let's talk about perloid for a second. And what I've always, a funny story, and correct me if I'm off, but in 68 and 69, if you get a 68, you know exactly what I'm referring to. If you get a Fender Stratocaster or Telecaster, and I'm not sure about any other models, with a white pickguard from those 2 years, if you take that pickguard off and flip it around,
it'll have perloid on the bottom.
It's perloid, man. It's a reverse perloid guard,
and that is true. I don't know the quantity that actually happened in, but
they ran out or something. They ran out.
They were using up all the perloid. They in the late 60s, Fender brought in a lot of perloids for like tele thin lines.
Okay.
Even into the 70s.
Yeah.
And I think they either got a great deal on stuff. Mm-hmm. They certainly got a great deal on screws, because Leo loved to put screws. I take a Mustang guard.
Like the 1 meg peg or the 1 meg pots.
Oh, yes.
Those two.
Yes, the painful pots. But I think they either were using up old material or whatever. But yeah, I've seen them. I've had people send me those guards,
and now they're rare, and people pay big money for them.
People want that look, and it can be done. Yeah. I had a source that was able to do basically masking on both sides, so you had a gloss on the bottom as well as a gloss on the top.
Yeah, I was getting some from Singapore. Mm-hmm. They were doing them right. Yeah. Finally, it took a while, but I was ordering those and then doing a 69 set of pickups.
Singapore is an American man in Wisconsin.
I knew that. But I always thought that was
a poor.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, I was trying to capitalize on that little, fun fact. Well, and I did for a while, and then it fizzled away.
Well, and it's interesting because I think a lot of people spend a lot of time, whether listening to podcasts or going on forums and what have you, and they think that that's the magic of certain things. And I think if you can try to replicate things as close as possible. Personally, I don't think you're going to get much tonal difference between having a flipped perloid pickguard on a guitar, but the player knows it's there.
The player wants to look right under the hood, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the hot rod industry.
Right. They used up the material to be, productive and not to be wasteful. Mm-hmm. And it turned into something to cool about.
They're also using that on the fretboards too, right?
That was probably the thicker material.
Okay.
They did use perloid back then. In some cases, they may have used pearl, but I'm not 100%.
No, I didn't know that.
But it's essentially the same material, just thicker.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Well, Gibson did the same thing. You'll find there's an era, I want to say it's in the early 70s. I could be wrong. Maybe mid 70s, that they got 5-ply material, which normally Gibson has a thicker white ply second from the bottom. Mm-hmm. There are a number of guards that actually have that thicker ply on the second layer down from the top. So you'll see them that way.
Are these no? You're talking mostly on like the semi hollows or the hollow bodies,
like on SGs, on anything that they use the 5-ply material on. Interestingly, I've got a batch from my plastic manufacturer that they screwed up the same way.
Oh wow!
So they were, I keep some on hand in case somebody ever says, well, I need the one that has the thick stripe on the top, or the second layer down.
Keeping it correct.
Yeah. So
cool, man. Well, super interesting stuff. I appreciate you sharing all of the stories. I think that's a little known part about our guitar world that, almost all of us have one. It's like a belly button.
Inner and outer, it's still there.
Jared has 2 of those.
You have to.
So let's do we're going to segue right into our Who Would You Rather. And speaking about perloids and crazy finishes and all kinds of custom-y bits, Jared, you want to give us our Would You Rather?
Okay, this week's for Would You Rather, for a fretboard inlay, lightning bolts, or would you rather have skull crossbones, which is pretty cool? Or last but certainly not least, would you rather have mud flap girls?
In all of our minds, we say, "Is there an option? None." But but for sake of fun and whimsy,
you have to pick one.
You got to pick one.
Yeah.
Okay, Jared.
Oh, here we go.
Just say it. You're gonna.
You got it. I got to do it. It's right now. It's in between lightning bolt and mud flap girls, but I got to do a mud flap girl. I'm going to do it. I'm doing mud flap girls.
Okay.
I mean, that was going to be my choice.
You could still choose it.
Take it.
Oh, okay. I thought we had to each pick one.
No.
And then go make them. No, I'm going mud flap girls.
Call Tony, the Pickguardian, for your custom-made mud flap girl inlays.
Yes.
I bet if that order comes in, I want to know. I want it.
I will.
I want a Pickguardian.
My wheels are turning, man. I think I might
duly noted
do this.
Okay, you're going mud flap girls?
I'm going mud flap girls.
All right. I'm going lightning bolts with a double lightning bolt at the 12th.
Nice. I like it.
Giddy up.
Don't they already make those?
Well, the Ace Frehley one kind of has that. But anyways.
That's why it's cool.
Yeah. They look cool. I'm down with that.
Skull and crossbones got left out, but
it did.
Those are really cool too.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of those. There's at least maybe a
and we're not talking about the stickers.
I'm talking real pearl, like real permanent, man.
Yeah.
And your Brazilian rosewood.
Yeah.
Fretboard.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, cool. That was fun. Yay. So we're gonna let you go now, Tony. And anybody who's listening, we greatly appreciate you. I want to make sure that you understand that from me, from the bottom of my heart. Please keep sending your comments and your emails and all of the things that you do to feed our souls back. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a real special request. I don't often ask anything of the listeners, but if you wouldn't mind going on to iTunes and just giving us a rating. Hopefully it's a good one if you're still listening. You got this far, right? I'd really appreciate that. We've got some good ones on there, but I know it's not something that people go out of their way to do. But if you happen to, I wouldn't be upset about it, and I'd really appreciate it. So for the three of us here, the last thing you just need to do is subscribe!
Yeah.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit us at our website at theguitarknobs.com for episodes, news, and guest profiles. You can get all social with us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/guitarknobs. Give us a tweet at guitar_knobs. And check out our gallery on Instagram at guitarknobs.